Johnson, Pryor, and McCain. Senator Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Madam Secretary, thank you for coming, and it's always a pleasure to see you back in Boston. And this has to do actually with a little bit of an extension of what Senator Collins was saying. The Urban Area Security Initiative Program has worked very, very well in Boston and the surrounding areas to improve emergency response and other homeland security efforts. It's broken down barriers amongst agencies in Massachusetts and in Boston in particular, and made more efficient use of those federal, very valuable federal dollars. And it's kept, as I said, Boston safe while preventing a duplication and waste of federal money. And in your recent budget, you eliminate the UASI program, and it makes a major city like Boston go through a lot of bureaucratic red tape and another layer of bureaucracy at the state level in order to get its security needs funded. And I'm hearing from Mayor Menino and other mayors that they're deeply concerned about this fact. Are you willing to meet with any of those stakeholders about their concerns?
We meet. I'm willing to and do, but if I might, Senator, I think our goal is to eliminate some of the red tape and streamline multiple grant programs into one national preparedness grant program. I think one of the questions that Mayor Menino might be raising is the fact that cities typically are not the direct. They don't get the check. It goes through the states, and then the states give the check to the cities, and there's sometimes friction in that process.
Well, there's not only friction. The states keep a little of the the juice on top, 20% sometimes, and it's obviously very frustrating to the states that have X amount and certain needs, and then the state's going to get the check, keep a piece, almost like here you go, and then give it out to the cities, and that's a deep concern of theirs.
Yeah, the statute sets out who gets the money.
Okay, I'll follow up on that. I'm also hearing that, for example, with that grant program, it unfairly favors the purchase of equipment over spending on planning. In other words, DHS makes it easier for local governments to get a vehicle funded than it is to get an evacuation plan for millions of residents funded. And will there be provisions of flexibility that will allow communities more time to get their planning right rather than rushing them to spend their funding on something that they may or may not need?
Well, let me take it in two bites. Number one, we have added a lot of flexibility in the grant process over the last 18 months, 2 years, in response to comments like we've received from some local and state officials. So, for example, monies to maintain as opposed to having to buy new equipment, money for training, money for personnel, which previously had not been allowed within the ambit of the grants. We've expanded the flexibility to permit that. With respect to planning, I would have to know the specifics about feeling rushed to do planning, but important evacuation planning, exercising, training is all part of that security safety net that we want to have.
Maybe if there's some specific issues, maybe I could get that information to you, and you can go and contact. We can draw that connection. That would be great. And I want to just say, I want to commend you and the President on your leadership you've shown on Secured Communities program. It's a common sense program, and I think would enjoy unqualified support here in a less politicized environment. And all you're doing is sharing information among law enforcement agencies to remove dangerous criminal aliens from this country. I know when you last testified, I was commending you on it. I want to continue to do that. And for those who are listening, let's be clear how it works. It isn't about randomly tracking down immigration violators. It's about giving local law enforcement factual and accurate information about someone they've arrested for a crime. They might have been arrested for. They might have just arrested a violent criminal who is in the country illegally or has a outstanding warrant. And sometimes the system you set up detects fugitives in our country who are evading justice back in their home country, and then merely letting the police let your agency know that they have these bad guys in custody, and you make the call on whether to pick them up. And it makes a lot of sense. I know nationwide, 79% of the nation and the jurisdictions are actually activated, when in Massachusetts we have 1 of 15 jurisdictions have been activated, and there's, for whatever reason, reluctance to fully implement this program. And I can think of many cases, especially most recently, that people's lives potentially could have been saved in Massachusetts if this program had been implemented. So my question is, could you please update us on that effort to bring the program to all jurisdictions, and number one, and do you have a sense of when the secure communities will be fully implemented in Massachusetts?
Well, we intend to be fully implemented by the end of FY 2013. The President's budget request provides the funding for that. And we have, I want to say, 320 some odd counties left, basically. So the big bulk of them have already been done. In Massachusetts, I know we have it turned on in Suffolk County. With respect to the other counties, we have ICE agents under our what's called the Criminal Alien Program who are actually in the jails helping provide the same information, but in the end, we really need secure communities. That's the system that links the fingerprint check that you do for criminal history with the immigration check.
Well, and listen, I agree with you, and there are many sheriffs in Massachusetts that also agree with you and the President. And some critics would say that implementation would mean communities are less secure, i.e. that would deter other illegal immigrants from reporting crimes. But there are safeguards that are in place for that type of thing. Is that right?
There are, including U and V visas that are given to those. Many communities have had secure communities in place now for a couple of years, and their police departments have good community outreach into communities, you know, that may feel particularly threatened, if I could use that word. Yeah.
Now, have you been in contact with Governor Patrick's office in Massachusetts on secure communities and why or why not why it has not been implemented?
I have, you know, I've been in touch with a number of officials about secure communities over the years. I can't think of anything recent with Governor Patrick.
But there has been communication in the past about this issue?
Let me not answer that. We'll check and see.
Okay, if you could, because I'd like to know what the status is and if you can provide any of that correspondence to us, because I'm trying to find out what the reasoning is, because, as I've said, people are dying. And this is another tool in the toolbox for law enforcement. And I agree with you. I agree with the President, and I want to see it implemented as many citizens do in Massachusetts. So I want to thank you for that effort. I look forward to working through the budgetary process with you. Thank you.
Thanks, Senator Brown. Next is Senator Coburn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Secretary, for being